Hello, Ian. How are you? Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the Hammersley Brothers podcast. I am your brother.
Exactly. Well done.
You are my brother.
Yeah. Well, what was it like? Because I haven't interviewed anybody on the podcast, and you interviewed Chloe Thomas. I don't know, a couple of weeks ago now. Was that any different? Talking to someone else?
Yes. Yeah, it is, because you have to be polite to your guests that you're interviewing. Unlike you and me, that we can, quite happy to slag each other off.
Right, yeah.
And disagree openly. Not that I disagreed with Chloe Thomas, I have to say, but I was aware that I have to nod my head and and say the right thing. But she's great, because we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Yes, but it was lovely. It's interesting because when you interview somebody for the first time, you obviously have to prepare a little bit more, and you have to think about asking interesting questions. Whereas with you,
are you saying that we don't prepare for hours before these podcasts and we just go?
I mean, I think if we did any more prep, people would just be overwhelmed by the incredible
level
of
of
our
quality.
Conversations. It'd just be too intimidating, I think.
Yeah.
So
for those interested in the weather, not a bad day today. It's all right. We're okay. What was the weather like in the UK? What was the weather like in the UK last weekend? Because pretty much all my big Google AdWords accounts last weekend, they went and spent a whole lot more at the weekend than they normally do. So going from spending like £4,000 a day to like £7,000 a day. And Google Google can spend up to twice the budget a day, and then it will kind of like bring it back to normal. But like, was it a crap weekend last weekend in terms of weather, or?
No, it was okay. The weather was good. Yeah, it was
so
nice.
I can't work out why it was. There was an Amazon bot attacking Google, doing a crawl bot. So maybe that messed up the algorithm or something like that made Google think there was more demand that weekend or something like that. Because we'll maybe see something like that. But it was a bit weird, because I came in on Monday and it's like
lots of changes in Meta as well, wasn't there, over the last few weeks?
And
things have been
reset. But this was Google.
I mean, we had a bank holiday weekend, I think the weekend before. We got one coming up next week. Also, people got paid, maybe. Possibly people got paid. It's the last week of the month.
They've been holding on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's one of those things it's like you usually know why, but occasionally you get those things and you go, it's like, it's not obvious. And you just got to roll with it, haven't you?
Well,
anyway.
Hence, actually, why we were chatting about that this morning. We did actually prepare this morning for the podcast. We said, what should we talk about? And I said, let's talk about something that we are talking about quite often at the moment, which is what to do if your e-commerce revenue is dipping. It's dipped. So you've got a discrepancy between, i.e., what happened last year, or you've not hit your target. What to actually do. And because it's a question we get asked all the time. And we're regularly having to go in with almost like a systematic triage approach of actually diagnosing what is going on. And over the years, we have a method of it. And I think to share the method of how we assess what's actually causing a momentary dipping revenue, and how, and just going through that methodical process, because probably over the years when we first started doing it, 10, 20 years ago, it possibly took us the whole day, to go and delve into every orifice of stats in Google Analytics 3, it would have been at the time, and looked at everything until we could then, eliminate. But now we have a fairly decent method of just saving a lot of time and actually finding the results. Otherwise, you're looking for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah. So basically, what we're going to talk about is basically what happens when revenue stalls. But you could also use it on the opposite of, if you have a particularly good day, what's happened at the same time. Because the trouble is, when you have a really good day, you tend not to look into it as much, because humans are much more focused on fear of loss. So you have a good day, you just go, yay, you just celebrate. And you think, oh, it's because we're amazing and all the things we've done. But, when things go badly, you're much more lean in. In fact, I think some of the biggest lessons I've learned is when things have gone wrong, because just the level of attention you have, you kind of see, oh, we should have done that, we should have done that, and it kind of gets you. So the first thing that I would check if things have gone a little bit funky would be to check the overall stats. So the overall thing. So like you've got, if your revenue's down, then it's going to be one of the three musketeers. So it's either going to be your average order value, your traffic, or your conversion rate. And you really kind of need to know which one of those it is, or a combination of those, because you could have great traffic, great conversion rate, but you might be out of stock of one of your really big average order values, or because like otherwise you're going to look at the different stuff. So that's where we'd first look. Do you want to say anything else about those three musketeers?
Yeah, no. I mean, fundamentally, three musketeers, which we haven't used that term for a long time. But yeah, it is simply traffic, conversion, average order value. So, the answer will be very clearly in one of those. What?
I'm laughing because the word you use a lot is orifice, right? And in your language, you use it a lot. And I just looked up the definition of it, and I was like, because I know you think it's a hole. And it's basically, the definition is an opening, particularly one in the body, such as nostril or anus. So perhaps you should stop using that and just say, looking at every single avenue.
Well, you do
might
go
be a
into
better
every
word.
hole.
It's like,
I'm glad
think
that
you should stop using the word.
See,
if you're having a guest and they use the word orifice, you can't call them up on it. But if it's your brother, you can.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Okay, you've thrown me off there, but you're right.
Yeah.
I will stop using that word. Orifices. Right. So anyway, yeah, three musketeers. I mean, obviously it's simple. That would be the first thing you would check: traffic, conversion, average order value, and then if your conversion rate is the same or largely unchanged, and average order value is the same, roughly. You normally spot it quite quickly. I mean, also we would, first of all, probably define when we would start looking. So if somebody said, "Oh, my revenue's dipped by 5%," we would, that's sort of fine. But if you're starting to see a pattern that's emerging of probably 15%, something like that, over a consistent few days, and what tends to happen is it will sometimes drop quite quick. You'll see it. If it's sort of gradually going, then that's a different conversation. But if it's if it's markedly had a downturn, it does point, and you can see it in the stats. But it's obvious, it's traffic, conversion, average order value.
That's a good point to point out. Actually, we're not talking about a bad day, because I think some of the more difficult people we've been partners with in e-commerce are the people who have freaked out at a bad day, and they'll be like a bipolar person. Like one day they have a good day, they're great, and the next day they have a bad day, and they'll be on the phone straight in the morning saying, what happened yesterday? Oh my God, and it's like, you can't look at that in e-commerce, because particularly when you're smaller, you're going to have lumpy days. The smaller you are, the more lumpy it's going to be, just because you're not on the main street, you're on a side road, and some people don't always come down that side road, and sometimes people, maybe there's a reroute, and people come down, and next day there's no reroute, and all those kind of things. So there's loads of things that are going to affect it, but we're not talking about a day. We're looking at an overall trend, maybe a week, or like a bad week is something you would look into. You wouldn't look into it a couple of days. So we're looking at those things, so average order traffic and conversion rate, and it's rarely, a bad week is rarely caused by an average order value, but it can be, and so therefore you've just got to rule it out. Most of the time, it's either traffic or conversion. Yeah,
but what I will say is which is connected to all three of them, actually, because you might find that it's across the board. It is all three of those, and if it's all three, it tends to it obviously points to as something that is global across the business, or it's something like a stock. You've got a stock problem.
Yeah, but I think you'd have to look at all the channels as well first. If you found that all channels were down as well, so that's the next thing, looking at channels. If you found all the channels were down as well, and your overall metrics were down, then you're looking at something that's fundamental, like stock levels, which is something we've been suffering with recently. It's like we haven't been able to spend as much as we want because we haven't had the stock levels in a couple of our businesses that we'd want to, and therefore we haven't been growing as fast as it. And it's like there's no analysis. It's just fundamentals, isn't it? It's like if you haven't got your best sellers in stock, you're not gonna sell. So and I think there's nuances to that as well. In that, I mean, like the next thing. Let's talk about the next thing, which is channels. So the next thing you would do is you go and look at your channels. You'd look at your email, Google, Facebook, TikTok, whatever your channels are, Pinterest, organic, to see if there's one that's kind of down, particularly year on year, or month on month. Month on month's a bit more difficult because typically 1 month compared to the next is very different. There's lots of seasonality to that. And, like if you compare like January to February, you're probably not going to see much because January's had the sale at the beginning and you're going to have these big sales, and then February is always dead. So, or usually dead unless you do something for like Valentine's Day or something like that. But, so you've got to look at it.
I would typically look at year on year. So I mean, most businesses are looking at the last rolling 30-day period, but obviously I would look at last year to rule out, did we have a dip last year naturally? But when we're looking at channels, we're actually looking, again, we're splitting it down. So the first thing we look at is traffic. If traffic was, it's the same. In fact, let's just dive in because it's actually sort of the same sort of thing. But if conversion rate or traffic was down, we would immediately split it down by traffic. So what we're looking at is by channel. So we're looking at channel change, traffic changes by channel, and conversion rate changes by channel. And that's that would be the obvious go-to. And you started to pinpoint, and you typically would if it is traffic down, you typically see it is more biased towards one or two particular channels.
The difficulty comes is what tools you're using. Because Google Analytics is particularly bad at showing you if Facebook's down because it doesn't really report that. So Facebook will tend to come through other channels like organic or referral or even direct. Google Analytics is very good at reporting Google Ads revenue, although it tends to underreport Google Ads revenue compared to the interface. And email also can be slightly misleading because email can actually, if you've got a big email list, you can actually generate quite a lot of organic traffic. So people like see the email address, see the email on the phone, maybe, and look on the computer, they just go and Google the brand name and things like that. So you kind of get a lot of whipping up effects from the different ones. So you kind of have to look at them in Google Analytics and also in the ad
platform
interfaces in the platforms.
You'd have to look at you'd have to look at the platform itself.
Yeah.
Which you could see the change.
Yeah, and Google Ads is very easy to see things year on year. Facebook's slightly harder. I find that the Facebook reporting year on year is quite difficult. I actually bring it out. I use something called Supermetrics to bring it out, so I can kind of see year on year much more easily in a normal way. But it is there, and you can pull things off. Now, usually like 9 times out of 10, well, this is actually not right, but there's like a lot of the times when someone has asked me to look at it for a bad month, it's usually email. And email has always been one of those that's kind of hidden because it does it organic and different stuff. And sometimes I'll look at it and I'll go, well, what emails did you send last year? What emails have you sent this year? And like they might have the same conversion rate on the emails that they send this year, but maybe they're selling something a pair of socks compared to a dress that they sold last year, and the average order value is completely different. So you have to be really aware of what happened, particularly from the email, because the emails to get out of jail card a lot of the time.
It can be that like a bank holiday fell into a different month, like Easter, for example. Oh, it was in a different month last year, so you can. It's like, well, the bank holiday of Easter hit in March, and this year it was in April, or vice versa, and that can have a different effect. To correlate. I think it also. I would look at you're looking at overall revenue, but you're also looking at, well, is it new customers that are down? Is it existing customers that are down? So you could start to see. So if it was existing customers, it does point to some activity that was happening internally. Was it
Mm.
email? Did you do an offer? Did you launch an offer? What was going on? And I think, I mean, what the first thing we said just before, just to clarify, it was traffic, conversion, average order value, and then I would repeat the same exercise for each channel. So if you haven't
Yeah.
found anything at that early stage, if it isn't everything's down, then and then you're looking at it, or if it's average order value, then you kind of know probably what's going on. But if it's traffic and conversion, then I would repeat it for each channel to see, well, what's happened to each channel for the traffic, what's happened to each channel for the conversion rate, and you then I would look at in-platform analytics at that stage as well, and I'd be breaking it down in terms of new customer and existing.
That analysis, you want to come out and know which channel to look at. So that's the idea. Is just like, are we looking at an overall problem? Is it stock or something like that? Or have we done something silly to the site or the conversion rate on the checkout or something? You look at the fundamental add to basket, stats basket to checkout, those kind of things. You get to the channel and you go, oh, it's Google Ads. Like, so Google Ads is everything else is firing. Email's better than normal. Existing customers are actually better than normal. It's actually Google Ads, and we're not recruiting as well on Google Ads. So what's happened there? So, if I think what we'll talk through is the scenarios where if it was AdWords or if it was Facebook, if it was organic, what would we do in those cases? So if it was AdWords you found, and you're in e-commerce, so basically AdWords is going to be dominated probably by your Google Shopping within the PMAX. So you're going to be dominated by your revenue coming from Google Shopping, and Google Shopping tends to itself be dominated by a few products. So like you might have, out of 100% of clicks, maybe 50% of the 80% of the 80% of the clicks are generated by 20% of the products, and maybe 50% of the clicks are generated by 5% of the products. And so what are your big clickers, your big traffic generator in terms of products, and what has happened to those over the last month? It could be that one of those has just been disallowed, or maybe there's some warnings on that one, or perhaps you've changed the price on that one recently, or maybe it's out of stock, or there's those things to look
you've
at.
had a price rise, or you've been uncompetitive on price. But So how would you check that? Because there's one overall thing I like to do if things are down. I like to look at the landing pages and the key landing pages to see what's changed over the period, particularly the products in the category. I like to see what's changed, because you often find that there was one or two dominant ones that have disappeared. But in terms of the ad performance, so in Google Ads or Meta, the overall ones I'll be looking at is cost per clicks. Has the cost per click changed? Has the ROAS changed for as a global for both Meta in terms of what Meta's reporting and what is Google reporting? What's the cost per click changed? And in Meta would be, has the click through changed? Has the ROAS changed? But in terms of those big hitters, though, the 80-20 rule, how would you assess the products in Google Ads in terms of that?
Well, I think what you said about the landing pages. So you could go into Google Analytics and you could say, look, show me all the landing pages for Google Ads for the last, things, even down to campaigns. You could say from a PMAX campaigns. If you think it's your PMAX campaigns, you could say, give me all the landing pages from PMAX campaigns this month compared to whenever it was. And the beauty of landing pages is that is the real stuff on the actual site where people are actually hitting it, so you can see where they're actually coming in. It's a bit like having a physical store and saying, well, look, the people are coming in this door, and last month there was 20% less, or there was 30% less people coming in that side door for those products. So that's a good thing to look at. The other thing you can look at in Google Ads is there is a report which will show you, which product IDs got clicks last month and which ones got clicks this month. So you can see that. Now, it doesn't give you the whole report. It's more of a kind of like sample of it. So if you get so many clicks from PMAX for shopping, maybe it might show you like 60% of those or something like that. But it's enough of an indicator to show you the big ups and downs on those. So you can see that by ID. The only thing you've got to look at is how people see your products. So, like let's say I've got this jumper, for example, and then this jumper comes in all different sizes, and maybe different colors. So if in Google Ads, this jumper is in 10 sizes, it's going to be in Google Ads for 10 different products, because that's how Google wants it to be. It wants 10 different products for it. But as far as the consumer's concerned, it probably has the same title, like product title, because maybe size isn't in the title, let's say for this example, and the pitch is exactly the same. And so really you might want to look at the stats or the products by what's called the item group ID, which is like the parent product for this jumper, so that, because effectively everybody's seeing that picture is what they're reacting to, and you might want to add those up, because you might
where would you be looking at that? Would you be looking inside Google Ads?
Yeah, Google Ads in the reports. There's basically in Google Ads there's a reporting section, and inside one of the default reports is for shopping, and you can, once you get into that, you can have a play around with it. Now, for some reason, they don't add conversion value or conversion value over cost, which is the ROAS by default. You always have to add it on, which is stupid, because why would you be looking at your products without ROAS? I think it goes back to the days when Google started and nobody had conversion tracking, so they just don't put it on. But it's silly. Everybody in e-commerce now pretty much has conversion tracking. You can't really run it without it. So I don't know why they haven't made it default. So you have to add those in. You can add a few more metrics if you want to. One of the ones is conversion value over conversions, which effectively gives you your average order value. That gives you a quite nice idea of what's being pushed. And that report will just give you an idea of what is being clicked and the cost per click and those kind of things that's been pushed on products. And that should give you an idea. I mean, obviously you're looking for obvious things like, we haven't had that product in stock, or that's not being pushed at the same time, or those products aren't getting more revenue. Now, with PMax, it's more difficult to do something about it though than it used to be. Like, we used to be able to up the bids of those products and push them harder. So if you see a product that should be selling really well, usually it's something site-wide that's happened. Or, let's say you've got some bestsellers that aren't pulling. You can pull them out into another campaign just to give them a bit more data. Like, let's say, the weird thing is we run these things called zombie campaigns. Zombie campaigns are products that haven't had any clicks within 30 days. So if they haven't had any clicks in 30 days, they're not got any data, and Google might doesn't have any data on them, so it doesn't push them. Now, weirdly, a lot of the time, my zombie campaigns, which are just the products that haven't had any clicks, actually has a higher ROAS than my normal campaigns, and that doesn't make sense, really, if you think about it. As far as Google's concerned, these are products that aren't getting any love. It doesn't think they're going to sell, and often they actually do get higher ROAS. So what that means is effectively Google can go off the ball. It can drop the ball and doesn't necessarily know the best way to get out of it. So you can need to look at the data to say, look, I can see you've gone down that rabbit hole, or that rabbit orifice if in your case, and
nice.
We need to come back out of that. And to do that, I need to kind of give you a little bit more data over here. So you might tweak a little bit with a little bit of your spend, maybe like 5% of your spend, just on kind of tweaking the data to put it back where you want to be. So like separate campaigns and stuff. You've got to be careful that you don't completely blast it, but
can I just jump in?
You can recorrect.
Can I just jump in a little bit? Because you're going quite right. You're going deep into the weeds about.
We can come out of the weeds if you want.
I'm going to come out of the weeds a little bit, because over our many years, veteran experience of seeing this, having this conversation a lot, it's actually, you have to make a decision of what you do want to do about it or not do about it. And most of the time, if you look at our own e-commerce businesses, most of the time when revenue is down, it's because of stupid little things that we've done internally or not done internally. It doesn't tend to be that there's a massive algorithm change in Meta or Google, that something fundamental's happened in the market. It tends to be because in that case, if it points to some big algorithm change in Google or Meta, to be honest, you're almost better off leaving it, because everybody will be in the same position, and you're better off not freaking out and changing things for the sake of change, because you can just get yourself into an absolute mess where you're literally blind trying to work out how to fix an algorithm change, and you're faffing around getting stressed and possibly making things work. And sometimes the best strategy is to do nothing. But when to do something about it? It's like it is actually most of the time, So from our perspective, if revenue's down, it probably is because we haven't been emailing enough, or something's happening to email, like data capture's down because the pop-up's not triggering, or there's something cocked up with our integration that's happened. The other thing that can happen is that we can be out of stock in some of the popular sizes. So take the conversation that's happening right now. We've got bedding in one of our e-commerce brands, and some of the best sellers have got 6 different sizes. Small, single, double, king, super king. I think that's it. And we are in stock of single, and double, but out of stock on king and super king, which basically is 80% of the sales of that product, but it's still in stock in Google. So we're wasting budget to promote that on Meta and Google, but we're out of stock in double, in the king and
I
super
think you
king.
need to explain that a little bit, because when people search for a sheet like white Egyptian sheet, they don't always say white Egyptian sheet super king. They actually just say what they want, and they presume that everybody's got the size that they want. So therefore you have to be careful. Like if you are promoting that product and you've only got double and single in, should you even have that product in if the majority of the market is going to buy a super king?
And you see
same with clothing. Yeah,
you see that with clothing, and particularly footwear. You might have a pair of shoes that's in stock in size 6. So take men's shoes. I mean, basically, if it's out of stock in size 8, 9, it's pretty much you're going to get half the ROAS than you would have normally done. So you make a decision, actually, do we put it in? And it starts to point at things like that.
The difficulty as well is that then that product, let's say the jumper, going back to the jumper, let's say the jumper hadn't got the size in the title and people never search by size. Google's going to take people to that product. The conversion is going to be really low because the other products are out of stock. And then it's going to go, well, that product doesn't sell. I'm not going to push it. Then the large comes back in stock and the mediums come back in stock. And it's going to go, well, that doesn't really mean anything to me. I've got all this data showing that this product doesn't convert. So you're sometimes better actually pulling out that product from the stock if that's how your feed's set up. Now, if you've got a feed where you've got the size in the title and you see that people who land on that size actually buy that size, then you're okay. But if people are landing on a different size and then buying a different size, that means they're coming through. They're coming through like they haven't told you the size, so Google's just giving a random size. They're landing on it. It's landing on a medium, and they're buying a large. That means that there's some miss there. So therefore, there's quite a lot of potential for you not to sell those sizes. So there's a little bit of analysis. Now, a lot of people who don't sell clothes or bedding won't have this problem, but they'll just have one variant for each product pretty much, and that'll be what they sell. Like when you're selling supplements, for example, sometimes it's actually better to put in the smaller variant with an image and say, and just have one variant and say also available in the other sizes, but the price that goes into the feed is the lowest price because people are very price sensitive for those products. So you've got to think about how people are searching and why, and then when things do go wrong, look at how that's been affected for those across those searches.
You always used to say, look at products that have a high impression but a low click, and look at products that have a high click but a low conversion. And see what's changing there. What's changing over time, and you've got to think about what the market's doing, what the competitors are doing. If you are selling other people's products particularly, or a big dominant competitor in that space goes on sale and starts to suck up all the traffic, that can have a massive effect on your ability to bid for that traffic. Particularly in Google, it really can. So and we would always say in that scenario, if you're a smaller player in a market, you're better off going on sale early. You're better off going early, because otherwise, if you wait till the big boys go into sale, you just get lost in and amongst just a sea of competitiveness, and you're just nothing. You just drop off a cliff. in terms of
So
visibility.
we've talked about Google AdWords. What about if it's Facebook? Well, we should talk about, if it's Facebook that's down, what we'd be looking in Facebook. And it's slightly more difficult because Facebook's not as tracked in Google Analytics as the other one. So you can look at your landing pages and that's fine, but often you're looking at the data in Facebook itself. That's what you're looking at. And so I don't know what that noise was.
Just someone rattling the cage in Manchester.
You get someone in the back of the office. You put the staff in the cages in the evening, and one of them was rattling the cage because they haven't fed them yet.
Hilarious. I'm right in the centre of Manchester, and you hear all sorts at this time.
Yeah. So
it's a lie.
I mean, a lot of the time, Facebook just goes off the boil. It's much more of like an emotional beast. Like you'll be running really nicely on Facebook, and then it'll die. Your favorite adverts will just stop working. It won't like them anymore. The algorithm will go off. Like it'll start thinking like everybody in like a small suburb of New York as your customers, and it'll spend all the budget there. It'll go off and dive down to the bottom of the bucket and just focus on existing customers. Like a lot of the time, Facebook will go off the boil for no reason. Like I think Google will go off the boil usually for a specific reason. Like there'll be something in it that's happened, like
or stock.
Yeah, or a competitor that's come in with a big offer. And you can look at the auction insights. Like Facebook, a lot of the time, you don't necessarily know exactly what's gone wrong because you can't see as many of the competitor metrics.
Let me probe you a little bit. So what at a made, because obviously you could look at the individual campaigns and the ads, but at a top level, what would you look at first at a glance? I mean, you're looking at budget spent versus click cost versus ROAS versus click-through rate.
The first thing I usually would look at is to see whether I've had a blowout in terms of whether the frequency's gone a bit weird. Because if what tends to happen is Facebook will always want to, like if I've got a client that spends a lot, has a lot of repeat business, Facebook will always want to try and go and put the ads in front of those repeat business because it wants to claim the sales. So I when I'm looking at the analysis, I would split out the default attribution for Facebook is 7-day, 1-day click. No, sorry, the other way around. 7-day click, 1-day view, and so
it's a 1-day view or a 7-day click.
Yeah, it's all of those.
Take whatever it wants.
So like just analyzing that against a 7-day click will give you an idea of how much sales Facebook's claiming for a 1-day view. Facebook seems to be very good at working out who's just about to buy that day and sticking an advert in front of them and showing them an advert and then saying, oh, that was my sale. It's very similar to Google Ads right back in the day when we used to have these view-through conversions. We used to have these huge amounts of view-through conversions, and Facebook would say, oh, I showed them a banner, and just because it showed them a banner that day or within 30 days of the sale, it took it. So first of all, I'd kind of like remove that 1-day view, just to see both of those, to see how much of that's being influenced those, because I might find that I'd been really thinking one ad was doing really well, but it wasn't actually doing nearly as well. Like you sometimes see your conversion values. Let's say you did 10,000 on the 1-day view, 7-day click, and then go to 7-day click. You might even see that some of the campaigns go down to half of that, like 5,000 in terms of revenue.
But that would happen all the time. That wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, but what I'm looking for
your meta is not performing as well. Like why you dropped off. I mean, you do that. Yeah. You should do that all the time.
Yeah, you would look at that all the time. But what I mean is I'm looking for adverts that maybe, like, because what tends to happen with Facebook.
It masks it? That if the default attribution that you use in Facebook is 1-day view, 7-day click, that masks a potential problem. Because to be honest, it looks like your ROAS is just massive, doesn't it? In my opinion, you times it by 5.
I mean, by this stage, I will know, like, because I'll have gone into the initial analysis, like the average order value, traffic conversion, and existing customers versus new customers. So if, for example, I'm seeing that my new customers dropped off, the new customers will be typically less likely to be 1-day viewers because the existing customers just kind of come to the site and buy all the time, so they skew it more. So I'm kind of looking at those kind of statistics probably with that hat on already because I know that of what I'm looking for. And so I'm kind of looking into, because a lot of the time when you're managing Facebook day by day, you're doing sweeps, and you're looking at things and you're just pushing the adverts that are doing well. You're bringing the new adverts in. You're dropping off the ones that are doing well. But if you have a drop and you have a bad week, then that's the time when you're going to have a bit more of a deep dive into the account to say, look, something's fundamentally changed. What's happening? So therefore, I might look at different attribution models to give me a story about what's happening. I might look more into frequency over 7 days, 14 days, 30 days to see how that's affecting across different campaigns. I might look at the structure of it, which landing pages, because you can, again, I use Supermetrics to pull out all the stuff from Facebook into a Google Sheet. So I'll be looking at the destination pages from the ads, how they've changed compared to the month where it was good and now it's gone off. And I'll go, well, we're starting to send people to the home page. We were sending people to the category page before. Why was that? What's the advert that's changed? So you're kind of looking at those differences and making a call on it. Now, the thing is about Facebook is a lot of the time I find is that you do the analysis, you find out that Facebook's down, and then it doesn't really make rhyme or reason, like, because it's your best ads. And really a lot of the time with Facebook, you have to go back into what's always worked. Like if you look into most Facebook campaigns who've been going for a decent period of time, you will have a subset of adverts that tend to work. That there's a theme around it. And so when things are going bad, that's the time to kind of retreat a little bit into your cave a bit, run what's always worked, reduce the budget a bit, build a new algorithm based on that, and then come out. And the adverts you'll run will be an echo of the adverts that have worked in the past, not necessarily a revolution. It's very unusual to get a campaign that's been spending a decent amount of money, like, talking about 2,000 a day or something like that, and then to come up with an advert that's completely different, that's revolutionary, that's different. It's usually an echo on what's worked before. Now, I'm not saying that I've never come up with adverts that have done much better, but like it's difficult to do that when you're already on the back foot from a bad week.
Yeah,
because
it's the wrong, because I think that's the sort of overwhelming compulsion, isn't it, to go, oh my god, we need a totally new set of creators, we need a totally new angle. And that's the real danger, because you can actually cause huge catastrophic failures to particularly to something like Meta if you do go down that road. And the reason why, what Mark's saying, in my opinion, I completely echo this. It is a natural evolution of an ad and a positioning and an ad creative that's working, that is the right way to go. And the reason that's the case is because for new customers, it's the first time that they've seen it. And yes, you have to tweak it and you have to have iterations of it, but really the core reason why that ad works is because you've tapped into the psychology, the emotions of where somebody is at that time. And that shouldn't fundamentally change from one day to the next, because the fundamental reasons why people buy from your brand and the positioning of your brand, should be really the core of the business, which isn't, shouldn't absolutely have a complete U-turn, because something's, well, it's so dangerous to come in with your big, size 9 boots and just
I think when you've had a bad week, that is not the time to do your big changes. Like a lot of the time when you do big changes, you kind of want to do it based on momentum. And based on momentum, put it into something that's already working. When things are going badly, you want to lean on your the people with experience. It's like you've got a football team. When you go to the penalties, you want to put your most experienced players up there. You don't want to just go, 17-year-old David, he's his first time, let's put him up to taking a penalty. It's like, that's not the time. You want to put your experience in place, because the experience is going to get you at least, not necessarily to your next level, but it'll get you back to where you were, which is where you want to stand on, and then you can play around. So it's kind of like that mentality. Is like what works, what's always worked, what can kind of like give us some stability at the moment, and then we can build on that. And then from that stability, that you can maybe build your new stable adverts that are going to work in the future. But you don't want to lean into a dip with the stuff that's untested, because you can actually go further into the dip, because it can actually take
that's right.
take you further.
I'll say the other thing as well is, if you are, which you should be with your, the flying bridge methodology, which is something we say, what to track daily, which is your new customer ROAS. You should be well aware of this. It shouldn't be a shock. So when you look at the figures at the end of the month, you're like, oh my God, like we've fallen off a cliff. If you're monitoring the stats correctly, which is what we talk about in all of our coaching programs, knowing what data to look at and what not to look at, you should be well aware of this, and you should be able to see it coming, and so that you're prepared. Whereas if you're not looking at it at the right time, then it will be a massive shock, and then you can be in a big problem, because it obviously has an effect on everything: cash flow, stock forecasting, everything.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. I think we've covered a lot of ground there.
I could tell you drifted off there.
No, I've just got to go. I've got to go to a meeting.
That's true.
I've already pushed it out 10 minutes for you. That was what I was doing when you could tell I was typing.
Thanks.
I know you could.
You do these podcasts for me.
Yeah, just so you can stay up till 10 o'clock at night in Manchester and get cages rattled at you. Yeah.
Now I've got to go outside.
Anyway, thank you very much, guys.
All right.
Yeah. Avoid the cage rattlers
everyone.
on the way home.
Yeah.
See you later. Bye.